Hello, listeners. Today we have a special guest on the podcast, Kate Lowry, CEO, coach, author, and comedian. She is a longtime startup founder, spent time in VC, is leading a values-driven coaching and advising firm called Scaleheart, and recently just published a book. The title of the book is Unbreakable: How to Thrive Under Fear-Based Leaders, and is a tactical guide to help smart, caring people get unstuck so they can thrive under fear-based leadership. In our conversation today, Kate is going to enlighten us on what fear-based leadership is, how to use the predictability of fear-based leaders to your advantage, and why it's having another moment in the tech ecosystem today. Well, Kate, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for being on Code Story.
Betcha, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Really excited to dive into your book today. Congratulations on the big release. It's a lot of work to write a book, especially, dialing in all of your experience. Tell me about you and your startup journey, kind of as a serial founder, right? Give me the story there, me and my audience, the story about you.
So I've been in the startup space for a long time. I started my first company, about 17 years ago now, and it was in the music space. I had trained as a conservatory musician and noticed a gap in the market relating to French horns. And so I founded a company serving French horn players, which was really fun and really cool. And then later on, I started companies in retail and in peer-to-peer lending, applying AI to lending markets before I joined McKinsey to try to sharpen my toolkit to make sure I had even more to offer startups. And then I spent many years in the startup world at an AI startup and big tech at Meta, and most recently at Insight Partners in venture, where I did a lot of AI strategy for the fund and worked one-on-one with hundreds of startup founders. And I found that being in VC is a little bit of a conflict of interest, being a coach and advisor. The founders are so afraid that you're going to fire them or tell their board member, that I decided to branch out and create my own coaching and advising firm so that I could be a really objective counselor with no vested interest.
Awesome. Very cool. Before we go too far, what is the name of that firm?
It's called Scaleheart Co. And I work a lot with mission-driven and underrepresented founders. So lots of healthcare, lots of AI, lots of climate tech. I tell people I like to work on have-to-have products, not nice-to-haves.
Very cool. You've obviously been around the block a bit in the tech industry. You've kind of done it all, which is really cool. And even outside the tech industry with the French horn business there. So the title of your book is Unbreakable: How to Thrive Under Fear-Based Leaders. And as I mentioned, as you mentioned, you've done a lot of things in this industry. And from your vantage point, and kind of in startups and big tech, and then as you mentioned VC, why is this new leadership style hitting now? Fear-based leadership. Why is it hitting now?
Just like blue jean styles, leadership styles go in and out of vogue too. It's in my career, this is the largest sea change I've ever seen in terms of a major shift in leadership style taking over. And it's been a long time coming. 5 years ago, CEOs felt like they had to at least pretend to care about their employees. And now we're seeing a gloves are off level of permissiveness with a lot of tech leaders saying, it's my way or the highway, get in line or get out. And I think a lot of that is from what we see like in entertainment and media. If you look at House of Cards and Billions and Game of Thrones, they all have fear-based leaders. But also, I've noticed that there is a pretty extreme mismatch in what people who want to be CEOs think a CEO is and what a CEO actually is. And I found that a lot of people are creating companies because they want to be able to do whatever they want and have people jump when they say jump. And when they get into the CEO seat, they find a rude surprise that shockingly they have some of the least freedom at the company because they're inside a very intense tangle of stakeholders. They have employees and their spouse and their board and their investors and their vendors, and they all want specific things. And when CEOs want to activate the escape hatch, they say, all of you be quiet. We're doing what I want. Let's do it my way. If you don't like it, too bad.
Right on. Okay. You're building in a startup and, linked into VC too, as venture being investing into the startup world. You're trying to do something new. You're trying to create something of value. You're innovating, right? Why is this sort of leadership style antithetical to innovation? Why does it essentially buck the trend of innovation.
It's super interesting that this is a style that innovative startups are trying to use because almost immediately it starts choking off innovation. And the reason that happens is first, in order to have the best ideas across your company be shared and acted upon, employees have to feel safe sharing those ideas. And they're not going to share something that's out of the box or big or crazy if the CEO is saying my way or the highway. And then secondly, I find that companies that use fear-based leadership end up with very high levels of mistakes, really severe technical debt, because people are so afraid to tell the leader when things are going wrong that they end up with 20 different Achilles heels that haunt them later.
Interesting. So if it's so bad for innovation, then why do people keep choosing it? What you mentioned with the Achilles heel makes a lot of sense. Why do people keep choosing it?
I think it's pretty bizarre, but psychologically, people choose it because it's easier than leading the right way. Fear-based leaders are called fear-based because they themselves are really insecure. They're motivated by fear. At night, their subconscious whispers to them, will I ever be enough? Will people ever like me? And so on. And because it's what gets them out of bed in the morning, it's what they choose to use to motivate others. But partly, this insecurity driving them creates a problem. If they don't like or trust themselves, it is very hard for them to like, trust, or support the people around them. And so sometimes this feels like the only option in their toolkit.
That makes sense. So it's kind of a psychological starting point with them in particular. And that, I could probably cherry pick something for this next question, but I'm curious, what makes leaders like this so predictable? I would suspect that it might be something to do with that sort of thought process. But what are your thoughts there?
So these leaders operate on a different logical radio channel. If you know someone who's very rational might operate on one channel, these guys are tuned to a different frequency. And so a lot of people look at them and they go, oh, they're so irrational, they're so chaotic. I feel destabilized. But they actually have very clear and simplistic forms of logic. And if you understand how they think and make decisions, it becomes very predictable. And when you can predict what someone's going to do, that means that you can use tactics very reliably on them to influence them to protect what you care about.
Okay, so and I think you may have touched on a few of those things, but maybe open it up a bit broader. How can people use that predictability to their advantage? How can they, if they're under fear-based leadership, how can they, progress forward into their day, essentially, and know what's coming to their advantage?
First of all, fear-based leaders weaponize information. So if you share any information about what you actually care about, it will be used against you. You might say, oh man, I'm so excited to go to my kid's Little League game this Saturday. You can bet they're going to call you on Saturday morning and make you work, right? And so if you start thinking more intentionally about what you share, that's actually very protective. Secondly, this type of leader feeds on attention. In particular, they love getting negative reactions. It makes them feel really powerful. And so one of the best ways to rob them of power over you is to not react. You could think of it as trying to be boring, like a rock in a landscape. You kick a rock, the rock doesn't do anything, it gets boring. The leader will move on and try to kick something else. And then third, I would say that people need to understand that their availability is a form of leverage. Fear-based leaders need constant validation, have their ego shown up. And I think that something that really makes them spin out is when you take an extra few hours to reply to an email. It's like they worry, oh no, are they not being appropriately deferential? Do they not really like me? It's a way of reasserting that you have an upper hand.
How has the type of issues you work on with your CEOs changed as this leadership style comes into vogue? Like, how have the issues shifted when you're going and coaching folks as you've brought this up?
So this type of leadership causes there to be more instability in the macro environment. If investors are saying, meet these metrics, or I won't be in your follow-on, or if you're a CTO and your CEO is saying, get this MVP out or else, It means that a lot of times my clients are coming to me and they're saying, I'm stuck in fire drill mode. I'm stuck in survival mode. And what I do with them is ground them, help them regulate, and then revisit the problems that they're stuck on together so that we can operate from a space of intentional strategy. And I'm finding that people right now need extra help stepping out of reactive states into states where they can have intentional responses instead.
Now, that's very powerful. What are the most common ways that you help founders? So you step out of those states. How do you help them in your coaching practice? Again, I could probably cherry pick a couple of things from what you just said, but what are the most common ways that you help them?
I create spaces where it's okay for them to not know things, where it's okay for them to have doubts, where it's okay for them to not be perfect. Founders feel so much pressure. They can't go to their board and say, help, I don't know what I'm doing. And they feel like they have to be strong for the people below them. And so for my early stage founders, I work with them a lot on thinking about what types of leadership choices will reflect their values, while also teaching them the ropes of how do you go from seed through IPO. With my later stage or my serial founders, I serve as the one person in their life who has no vested interest in their outcome, but deeply cares about them being successful in the way they define success. And that often means strategically going toe to toe with them as a thought partner and holding them accountable for the choices that they're making.
Very good. Okay, let's get real practical then. What are 3 ways that CEOs can make sure fear-based leadership doesn't take root in their corner of the tech ecosystem? How do they make sure it doesn't, become the foundation of what they're doing?
There are several things that can help. I'm a big fan of doing pulse surveys of your employees, checking what is your employee NPS, right? How are employees feeling? Are they feeling supported? Do they feel like they can share things when issues come up? So that you have live feedback at least once a quarter to catch any burgeoning issues. Secondly, I think it's really important to create forums to celebrate not just successes, but also failures and mistakes. You want people to see that you celebrate learning and growth, not perfection. And then lastly, you need to create forums for people to share big ideas. Your customer success team might be lowly, but they have a closest ear to the ground of customer pain points than anyone at the company. Find ways to help them share what they're hearing. And seriously, even though you're hearing this all the time, do not push your company to do 996.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The buzzword that everybody's, the buzz acronym that everybody's talking about now, right? AI. How has the AI boom affected all of this? We're talking about fear-based leadership, the tech world, the VC world. How has the boom, affected all of this?
So I founded an AI startup 11 years ago. Then I worked for an AI startup reporting to the CEO a few years after that. Then I worked on AI products at Meta and drove a lot of the AI strategy at Insight. And I have to say that over this span, we are now really in a boom phase. And that's very exciting, but it's also really changing the way leaders see their employees. A lot of leaders are very resentful that their employees are messy, have needs, can't have 24/7 uptime, and that they have lives outside of work. And now people are starting to compare that to agents, which have 100% uptime, are fallible in different ways. And so I think that as a society, we need to help people know that AI and humans are going to be working collaboratively. But that's genuinely tough when a lot of CEOs are deliberately trying to rule out humanity from their companies. I'm seeing much more extractive transactional behavior than I was even a few years ago.
It's sort of sad when you think about it like that. We're kind of removing the humanity from humans there. Kate, really appreciate you being on the show today. I think the book that you've written is very timely, outlining what fear-based leadership is and why it really is antithetical to innovation, and then how people can understand fear-based leaders and how they can, respond to them essentially in their day-to-day lives and understand how they're going to react to their work and to the things that they're doing in those sorts of jobs. Where can people go to learn more about you, to learn more about Scaleheart, and to buy the book?
So you can find my coaching website at scaleheart.co. My book is available wherever books are sold, at Barnes & Noble, at Amazon. You can follow my writing at katelowry.substack.com. And you can follow me on socials on Instagram at @KateUnbreakableLowry or on LinkedIn.
Very good. Well, Kate, thank you again for being on the show, and best of luck with the book.
All right. Thank you so much, Noah.
Thank you for tuning in today. As you can see, we've only hit the tip of the iceberg in this conversation with Kate on fear-based leadership and how to thrive under this type of regime. If you would like to learn more about Kate, go to katelowry.com or find her on Substack. If you want to engage with Scaleheart, go to scaleheart.co. And finally, I would encourage you to check out her book, Unbreakable, which you can purchase on Amazon from the link in the show notes. And thanks again for listening.